how China would hit U.S. bases from California to Japan with invincible hypersonic missiles in Pearl Harbor-style strike. Now, this is quite a headline, but it's also referencing something that we talked about, the lasers over Hawaii. This is something that we have said for weeks now, and of course, on our Spaces 2 Fridays ago, we had a gentleman who was incredibly smart talk about exactly this, that there were plans for China to take not only Taiwan, but also Japan and Hawaii. And after the LiDAR lasers ended up coming down over Hawaii, a lot of people started asking what the heck happened there. At first, they thought it was a NASA satellite, and then they apparently thought, oh, well, actually, that can't be. It's Chinese satellite that's supposed to be for monitoring weather. Well, apparently, it can also be dual used to LiDAR or to basically to do computer analyzation of the land. So this talks about how they could actually use it to be able to dispatch hypersonic missiles to a very, very specific place. It says that China could strike U.S. bases from California to Japan with invincible hypersonic missiles. Experts have warned. What's funny about that is just us normal people took a guess at this, and that's exactly what the experts are saying now. Just us regular people that are looking at this and going, that's strange. Why would there be lasers coming down in a grid over Hawaii? Anyways, it says that Beijing has built up a huge arsenal of hypersonic weapons dubbed carrier killers aimed at neutralizing the power of the U.S. Navy and attacking American facilities in the Pacific. And again, it says that experts warn China could strike U.S. bases from California to Japan with hypersonic missiles using intelligence-gathering satellites. So as you can see, this is kind of recognizable. They have a graph here of these lasers going down, scanning, and essentially targeting Alaska, California, Hawaii, Japan, South Korea. So it's even the places we mentioned, and now mainstream is now covering it. They're always basically a couple weeks behind, right? And it says Beijing has already demonstrated its military might by launching 2 hypersonic nuclear missiles which circled the world and defied the laws of physics. If you remember that, there was one object that was going hypersonic speeds, which then released a second object going hypersonic speed, and they split up. It said as tensions continue to mount between Washington and Beijing over Taiwan, U.S. officials fear China could use hypersonic missiles to wipe out American warplanes and bases in Japan or Guam in the event of a war. Hypersonics don't have much to stop them. We'll talk about that tonight and everything else that has gone on in the world today, so make sure to stick around. It is a live show. Anything can happen. We're going to go over all of the current events and everything else, so stick around. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Today, we have a lot to go over in a short amount of time. So remember, if you are new here, go over to marfooglenews.com for a full bibliography. You'll see every single article, tweet, video, picture, document that we're going to share here today. On top of that, you will see that we have every single source. Go to the Pearl Harbor. You can just go to today's thumbnail, Pearl Harbor 2.0, and then no time to react. Once you go there, you'll see not only all of the sources, but all sorts of extra stuff. There is overflow or web content. That is all the stuff that could not fit into the show, or is the stuff that would get you in a fight if you talked about it in a bar. So make sure to go check that out. There's a whole lot of important news down there as well. But we're going to cover some of the craziest things going on around the world. So make sure to subscribe if you do want to see the future shows that we put out. And, of course, all of our other videos over on our sister channel, Marfoogle News. Let's bring in my co-host / internet brother, Dex James. What is going on and how are you doing today?
Hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So we have a lot to go over. In fact, over the weekend, usually it piles up. So we'll just go over that. But I do want to point out, many people in the community were talking about this, weeks and weeks ago. Now, more experts are coming out and basically pointing out the super obvious. It didn't take a genius when you saw the lasers over Hawaii to think, that's kind of weird. And then when they found out that it wasn't a NASA satellite and it was a Chinese satellite, it was kind of like, oh, okay. But of course, this was pointed out weeks ago by just people taking a guess. And now the experts are weighing in and they're saying, yeah, this is probably for some sort of targeting. I thought more along the lines of like drones. Autonomous drones could, if they LiDAR and essentially, scale it in and render it in 3D, they would be able to tell where to go. I didn't think about hypersonics. There's not really a defense against them. Dex, as far as when you saw this, didn't you think the same thing? It's like we've been talking about this for weeks now, and now finally others are coming out and saying it. And watch, I bet you the DOD or somebody's going to come out and say, oh, that's what we think it is.
Well, yeah, they said that was that the satellites, as we reported from the news a while back, were used for monitoring weather and specifically checking atmospheric density and things like that related to the change. So they were saying, but the experts are actually suggesting that that's the exact data needed to accurately target these re-entry vehicles, needing to know exactly what more information about the atmosphere and how it's coming in, so that they can have a better, exploit the capability of the hypersonic.
Thought it was interesting. On the plane, it has 20 and possibly a bar. It says 20119, or that could be 2019. I don't know, with the bar between it. Interesting choice, right? I don't know if they got that off of something or a real plane, but anyways, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the late show. Apologize. I was working all day, and I appreciate you guys coming to our late show. So, Stephen McMahon, thank you so much for being here. Says, hope we are all here. I hope we're still all here on Monday. God bless you all. Stephen McMahon, I sure do too. Wait, isn't it Monday? Oh, okay, that was last show. Hey, Stephen McMahon, we made it. Thank you, Elijah D. I missed you on the last show, too. Says, thank you, Marf, for what you do. Jesus loves you all. He'll protect you. He is king. Elijah D., thank you for the super chat, and I appreciate that. Zariel, and thank you, and God bless you as well. All right, and then let's go into we're going to touch back on this later, by the way. So we'll go back into that. We're going to talk about the SVB thing, and if you did not know about this, if you didn't watch Friday's or Thursday's show, it was kind of brought up or something like it. I think Friday is when this happened, correct? Dex, isn't that when the SVB got shut down?
Yes, Friday.
Yeah, so I feel like we covered something, a bank glitch on Thursday, but then on Friday, this actually happened, and this was not a glitch. SVB, or Silicon Valley Bank, got taken over by the FDIC. And what happened is they kind of collapsed, right? It says that U.S. says that all SVB deposits are safe and created a new backstop for banks. See, I wonder if there's something else here. I'm not a financial genius when it comes to this, but I I just wonder if there's another reason for all of this happening. It says U.S. financial regulators moved on Sunday to protect depositors' funds, allowing the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank, and set up a new financial backstop, seeking to stem fears that households and businesses would flee smaller lenders. The Treasury Department, Federal Reserve, and Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation jointly announced the efforts Sunday aimed at strengthening confidence in the banking system after SVB's failure spurred concern about spillover effects. It said that SVB, or Silicon Valley Bank's collapse into the FDIC receivership, the second largest U.S. bank failure in history behind Washington Mutual in 2008, came suddenly on Friday following a frenetic couple of days where its long-established customer base of tech startups yanked deposits. After SVB's collapse, a number of other regional lenders saw their shares plunge amid concerns about the financial stability of the smaller banks. Now, what makes me weird about this is, first of all, some folks knew beforehand. The actual people in charge of the company sold some of their shares just weeks before. And then you had actual tech cronies that were told to take their money out right before. So it's like they knew. Or did taking that money out affect it to that much? And, obviously they weren't pulling out 100 grand. Some of these people had millions and millions and millions of dollars in there, if not billions, right? So everybody pulling out at once, could that have actually forced something like this to happen? But apparently they pretty much know what happened there. And it says Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that the actions will protect all depositors, signaling aid that those accounts that exceed the typical $250,000 threshold for FDIC insurance, which is crazy that FDIC only covers $250,000 technically. It says that SBV depositors will have access to all of their money starting Monday, March 13th. The government said in a statement, adding that taxpayers won't be responsibility for any losses associated with SVB's resolution. But see, maybe they can do this with one bank, but what if all of them go down at the same time? I'm sure that is something that people are thinking about right now, because most people don't know all the ins and outs of it. Dex, so they're basically saying that the money is safe, right? Could it be safe in the future? Or will it be safe in the future with other banks, though?
Well, they're creating a banking term funding program that's going to offer loans to banks under easier terms than they would normally get from the central bank. I think this is exactly what they're trying to create to back as a backstop, as they're referring to it, to help protect some of these smaller banks that get into this issue. One of the critical problems is these banks would take in money and be deposited, and then they turn around and loan that money out, or they invest that money, and they have to invest it. Obviously, let's say they take 100,000 from someone, they put it in the bank, they turn around, they may invest that 100,000 in something that's going to pay 1% or 2% interest, and then they might give back a 0.5% or 0.25% interest to that depositor, and that's how they make money on the spread. But they buy that in long-term, bonds or other things that have value over time. That's how they hedge their money, or they loan it out and they give a portion of it out as a loan to someone for a car. Those are all assets, but it takes time to get that value back from those assets. If it's a maturing asset, they might have to wait 5 years to get it all back. Or if it's a loan, they might have to wait 5 years or 8 years on a car, or 15 or 20 or 30 years on a house. So all of that, it doesn't mean the money's gone. It's just held up. And so by the Fed stepping in and offering these loans, they can offer a loan in this scenario that can back up if they need that cash, if they get the cash run. That's the problem, is when somebody runs the bank, they go after money that's not there.
So you said something, and you said because the money's not gone. How do we actually know that? There's been so much corruption in all of these different places. Like, what if they did do something horrible or invested it in something crazy, or the people at the very top somehow went around the rules or something and did something risky? Oki Khan asked a good question. Did they say how this went insolvent? Like, how did this actually happen? They weren't insolvent. They lost value and everybody ran on the bank. And when they ran on the bank, they had to shut it down because there was no cash to give the people. That doesn't mean that the bank is insolvent. It just means they don't have the cash on hand, which is normal. A bank, like I said, will take in money and then loan it right back out. So that's how they make their money, is brokering it. And they're making it assuming that everyone's not going to take 100% of their cash out at that moment in time. But what you are saying is all of these rich tech guys who pulled out their money is what caused this. Is that right?
Absolutely. Well, that's part of it. The prior part was they did a bunch of stupid things, or some people would call stupid things. They did a lot of things that made themselves look bad in the market. So those tech people got nervous and they said, "Wait a minute, SVB doesn't look good because they've got they're trying to raise all this money. Why do they need money now? What's happening?" So they go, "Let's pull our money out of there. It might not be a safe bank to be in." So they start yanking their money out. And as soon as, a couple people start telling them, word gets out in the tech community. Unfortunately, they're not spread across all these communities. They're in a couple of, communities, one being tech, really heavy. All those friends start talking to one another and all of them start bailing, and then the bank fails.
Okay, I'm going to switch you over here real quick. I have another question because I don't. You get this a lot more than I do. As far as, so these guys pulled out, this happened. So basically, you could question this and say, hypothetically, somebody could have told, these guys all could be in the same, closed door meeting, or they could have all been at one of these Davos meetings or something, right? Technically, just hypothetically. And something like this, now the government is stepping in and making this new program. Is there anything possibly evil about this backstop that they're creating? Is there any negative part to it? Is there any more control to this? Like, if the Fed makes a backstop thing, is this just all positive? Is there no negative behind this backstop program or the bank term funding program?
It's just another smokescreen to cover up the problem of the economy. All of it's a big problem. I mean, the fact that the banks, bought, maturing assets that were only worth 1.5 or 2% just 2 years ago, and now you can get 5, 6, 7% on your money. It means that all the assets they hold are kind of worthless, not worth zero, but nobody wants it. Why would somebody say, yeah, I'll take that, $1 million asset you have there that's paying 1.5% interest, when you can go somewhere else and get 4 or 5% interest, because the Fed has jacked the rate up so fast that we couldn't equalize. In other words, you couldn't start to balance out the lesser interest rates with the higher interest rates. We just went from 0 to 6 or 7% interest overnight. So that's the biggest problem, and that's what the Fed did, and they did that, and it caused this problem. But they did that to stop inflation, because inflation was a problem. But the reason we have inflation is because they printed a whole bunch of money, and that caused a problem. So it's like a whole
which was because
effect.
of CV, and
Exactly.
CV was because of something else shady as hell. So do you see why normal people are asking, like, what the hell is going on here? And it seems very purposeful. Just, it's crazy. I don't know, man. I think that this is obviously part of something way bigger than that any of us even could imagine.
But in general, I don't think it's I'm not running to the bank and taking my money out. You guys may think I'm crazy, but I'm not. And it's because I've spread my money in a few different places. I don't have all my eggs in one basket, but I also don't feel like I need to contribute to the problem. The banks themselves, the way they're run, the deposits should be there and backed up by assets that have the same value. And the real problem is something shady happens, and that's when FDIC insurance is really supposed to kick in. Is if they do something, really, really egregious and illegal. If they're following regulations, they should have assets that equal the amount of money they're taking. While you may not be able to get all your money that day, it should actually balance out. And in this case with SVB, the Fed said, hey, everybody's going to have their money, not just the 250, but all of it, because there's enough assets there. They're going to liquidate them and sell them over time or do whatever. And they're just going to create a loan to handle it in the meantime. So it doesn't cost the taxpayers money. They're just going to liquidate SVB. Now, the shareholders of SVB, they're screwed. They're going to lose everything. The employees, gone. Now, mind you, they paid themselves bonuses hours before this went down. That's kind of crazy. And the CEO and CFO sold stock like a few days before this went down, or a couple of weeks before this went down. So there's a lot of crazy things going on here, which all are getting the light of day. But at the end of the day, the people who put their money in, the depositor, that's the most important money, and that money,
and they're getting their stuff.
They should be getting their stuff. They always should. That should never fail, because otherwise, a bank's not operating within regulations. That's actually super illegal.
That is so crazy. Yeah, I didn't know about the paying themselves a bonus hours beforehand. That's just insanity. Uh,
I'm sure they looked at it as a severance. They like, hey, we know we're about to hit the ground. Let's take care of the employees on the way out the door. But it just doesn't look right.
It's super shady, super shady. And then customers line up outside of First Republic Bank to take their money out after SVB bank collapsed. So, folks, this is like, these are some of the very scary signs that something is happening here. It says contagion spreads. Desperate customers line up outside of First Republic Bank to take their money out after SVB Bank collapsed. And by the way, we're seeing people in chat. A lot of people did go and they did get their money out, or some money, right? It said on Saturday, dozens of customers were shown lining up outside of First Republic in Northern California, eager to withdraw their funds in the wake of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. The reason why, people are afraid if they put their life savings somewhere that it's supposed to be safe. Crazy to me, though, too, is how banks work, right? You literally put your money somewhere. When you're a kid, you think, oh, it's just a place where they keep it safe and they've got a security guard. When really you put your money there, it doesn't even stay there. They then use it along with everybody else's money, and then they take your $20 and somebody else's $100 and somebody else's $100,000. They put that all together and then they invest it and send it all over the place and put it in investments, and they're making money off of your money. It's not like it's they're not doing it, and then they charge you fees. That's the craziest part. It's like, they say, if you have so much money, you don't have to pay little fees, but it doesn't matter if you have $200,000 or anything in it. They'll still charge you those dumb fees. And it's like, they're making tons of money off this. How does this even happen? There's got to be something risky or shady happening for this to happen, right? If their whole thing is that they only do safe things and they only, put this, they're always covering their bases, right? Well, people are starting to run on the bank, and like Dex said, if you end up doing that too, there's a chance you may be contributing to all of it, and it might even make it worse. But at the same time, who's going to tell you not to when, if you're nervous about it, it's your money, you can do whatever you want with it. It says that there had been fears following SVB's demise for the First Republic's future when analysts pointed out the similarities between the estimated value of their assets versus the actual value. So people were looking at it, and they looked at the numbers and the charts and the graphs, and they said, whoa, this looks just like SVB. So people ended up starting, all it takes was like I think at first it was like a blog post. All it takes is a couple pieces here, and then it just, then everybody starts talking about it, and then everybody, starts getting worried. And for sure they should. This SVB thing, many people don't care about, especially if you don't have money in the bank. Who cares, right? It's first of all, many people don't even trust the banks to begin with. After stuff like this, it's much harder to gain that trust back. Dex, go ahead.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of people shift their money from these smaller regional banks or even from the credit unions into the big banks. And that might be part of their strategy. If they can align everybody into, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, whoever, Chase, whatever, the big banks, the top five. Because, when you look at them, they look like they're, obviously so big that everybody's not going to run on them. And they can't necessarily be as easily affected as we've seen these smaller banks get hit. I think part of this may be a strategy to scare people out of the small banks and upturn the banking industry where everybody's in the big banks, which might make it easier for them to then roll in some sort of change because then it's not across thousands of institutions. It's just the top 4 or 5 that manage everything, sort of like our cell phone companies, which are really just 3 or 4 that have the network. So that's just my opinion. But it certainly feels that way when I look at how this is hitting these smaller banks. Not that these smaller banks are necessarily great; they've done shady things, but yes, it's kind of creepy. And look, people are going to run. That's what people do when the system doesn't create confidence. People don't have confidence in it. They take their money. Now, I'll tell you a story. I had a friend, sold a house, had like $80,000, doesn't trust the bank, put it under his mattress. His girlfriend of like 8 months took it all and left the country, and he just lost 80 grand because it wasn't in a bank.
Well, somebody, what was that? Dirty Sky says, I prefer the bank of sock drawer. I mean, exactly. There's a lot of people that do that. A lot of other folks I saw silver stacking, silver and gold, one little coin right now, a quarter-ounce coin, like the one that, Noble had for the, if you put a certain amount into the IRA thing, that little coin is $500. A little tiny, it's like the same size as like a nickel, right? That in gold is $500. You can easily hide that. My stepdad, rest in peace, was a total jerk, but he stacked gold and silver, and he had those like little stack things. They look like coin holders or whatever, and they were white containers. He had those full of silver dollars, and then he also had those full of gold. And back then it was like $300 an ounce. Now it's of course like over 2,000. And that wasn't too long ago. That was 20 years ago when I was a kid. And he buried those. And when he passed, I'm not joking you, he was a busker. He had a band that was really, it was all about drinking and all crazy stuff. He was just a nut. He was literally the rock star that wasn't a rock star. But he ended up burying his gold all over Washington. And his daughter, when he died, ended up getting the map. So he left in his will that she would get this map of all the public parks that he drank at, and she got to unbury it. And by the point she did, and by the point he perished, she ended up having like $85,000 in gold, and she used it for college. No joke. And I thought that was so cool. He wasn't cool, but man, it was pretty. She literally went around and dug this stuff up and got the gold out of the ground. And I thought, man, that is one cool thing about the gold. She was able to go and get whatever spot price was at the time, and she just cashed them in. And I think she still has some. So it's like, there's stuff like that. But yeah, if you have literal cash, even if it's $100 bills, if you have any amount of money, it's dangerous to keep it. It's dangerous now to put in the bank. It's like, what the heck are you going to do? Oh, well, I guess they want you to be digital and put all your stuff in the bank. Like Dex said, if they get everybody from the small lending credit unions and all that, and everybody's afraid to put it in there, where do they go? They go to like one of 4 big banks. And then they're cutting down the tracking they have to do down to just 4. The Banking for All Act, look that one up. Even if you just say that, they filter stuff. And then, again, this kind of goes further into it. This is a piece on the Washington Examiner on the $620 billion hole in the banking sector that this bank fallout shined a light on. It said fallout from the Silicon Valley Bank collapse has directed attention to a $620 billion ticking time bomb in the bank. Pontificated time bomb. Time bomb that in the banking system that has the potential to spell doom for the financial system. SVB's meltdown was partly caused by the chasm. I like that. I love that they used the word chasm between its assets and what they were worth in the market, which is, again, the same thing they said about the First Republic. They said they were very similar in that way, what they had versus what they were worth, spooking investors and triggering a run on the bank. It said, but SVB isn't alone, as banks across the United States were sitting on $620 billion in unrealized potential losses at the end of the last year, per the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. That hole illustrates why authorities at the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, and the FDIC were so eager to stave off contagion or panic spread from the SVB's demise across the banking sector. It almost makes you wonder that if even the government knew, and to reduce panic and things, they possibly allowed some of this stuff to happen or something. I don't know. It says the reason for the predicament is the banks compiled a plethora of bonds and treasuries during times when interest rates were hovering near zero. But now the Federal Reserve has begun jacking up rates in an effort to combat inflation, which, again, we talked about. And then huge seaweed bloom. Dex, did you want to comment on it before we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to say the analysis of the 620 billion, for those of you that are trying to understand what's happening here. This is the amount that they think across all banks is the assets that are not valuable or they have to hold till they mature. So they're holding for a long time. And they're those really low interest rate deals. Like maybe they bought bonds for 1% or something just 2 years ago. Remember, interest rates were like at zero just a year and a half ago. So, and now they're at 6 or 7. Oh, I say that, I'm thinking of mortgages, but they're up, they're high. So this is that total amount that's sort of hanging out there that will go back to the whole notion of, do we think there's a potential financial issue in the entire banking system? And this is it. And it goes back to the interest, which goes back to inflation, which goes back to printing money, which goes back to all the little things that we've done for the last 2 decades to, sort of put ourselves in this position.
You'll see. Who was that said that? Quarter T 2A1 says inflation report tomorrow. And then WS Jen says, I saw some say there was a bank closed and linked to one here from Australia. I don't know about that. If you have information, tweet it to me or DM me. Absolutely, the Kenyan is involved in this. Kenyan or government? CIP report tomorrow. Yes, sir. Yep. Eddie Collins. We'll be covering that. And then Jamie Sundenberg. Think of the FTX story and all of the corruption that went to the mostly Democrats and some of the Rhino Republicans. It's a big cover-up. Were they you? Oh, well, it is the tech bank. Dex, go ahead.
I was going to say SVP did have a branch or division in the UK. And I think HSBC announced that they were buying all the assets except for the depositors. They were buying the other assets from them today. And of course, these other banks that buy this stuff up are getting a great deal because they're, liquidating.
Fifth bank by Friday, says Matthew Shaw. $100 is the new 20, says Ben Dinnett. Richard says it will only take about 3% of the population to run on the banks and collapse the whole thing. They'll all be insolvent. So, what's crazy is, I don't know if it's 3%, but I have heard that it is not a huge amount to actually do that, and they could really screw everything up. So it is good for people not to panic. I have seen a scenario where they played it out and they said that actual panic caused the demise, even if there wasn't an event that actually deserved the panic. So I don't know how true that is, but yeah. Just imagine if we actually screwed ourselves by, everybody jumping on the bandwagon. That would be crazy. But who knows? Maybe in the future it will be necessary. And then a huge seaweed bloom that can be seen from space threatens Florida beaches. It says that a giant seaweed blob is so large it can be seen from space and is threatening to transform beaches all along Florida's Gulf Coast into a brown morass, scientists say. It says a 5,000-mile wide sargassum. Are these real words? I'm getting punked. Bloom, believed to be the largest in history, at twice the width of the continental U.S., is drifting ominously towards the Sunshine State. It says it's incredible. Brian LaPointe, a researcher professor at Florida Atlantic University's Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute, told the news outlet. It says what we're seeing in the satellite imagery does not bode well for the clean beach year. It says the thick algae mats are mostly harmless as they drift between Africa's western coast and the Gulf of Mexico and even provide a habitat for certain marine life and absorb carbon dioxide. However, they can wreak havoc closer to shore where they block light from reaching coral and negatively impact air and water quality as the seaweed rots. So it says that LaPointe said massive piles typically wash ashore in South Florida in May, but the algae are already inundating beaches in the Key West. Brian Barnes, an assistant research professor at the University of South Florida's College of Marine Science, told NBC News that the sargassum can cause major problems even in the coastal waters. It can block intake valves for things like power plants and desalination plants. Marinas can get completely inundated and boats can't navigate through. It can really threaten critical infrastructure. So, everybody still argues back and forth about the environment and what is actually happening to it. Most people just argue they know that something is happening. They know something's changing, but they argue about what is or who is doing it, right? Or who is not doing it. as you guys know, one of somebody I know pretty close has done research on all of the different coral. And coral, that part, I do believe something is happening there. I don't know why, but I do believe that the coral are dying like crazy, right? There's a whole ecosystem under our water. But is it because of the cycle? Is it because of this? I don't know. But one thing I'll say is, like, with this algae thing, most of the time they're hyping up something that's even normal, and they're, putting it into a package that makes you freaked out about the environment. Is this worth freaking out about? You tell me. Let me know in the comments down below. Dex, as far as like the green algae, that sounds pretty crazy. 5,000 miles wide. That's bigger than the United States floating in the water. But is that necessarily a bad thing? They said there's marine life in it, and it eats up carbon dioxide.
Well, I think if it floods the coast and kills off the coral reefs and causes people to have bad air because of the rot, that could be a problem. There's all sorts of blooms that can get airborne from that. Yeah, this is a big thing in the sense that I don't recall ever hearing something twice the size of the U.S. Coming across the Atlantic. So that's a lot. I mean, we've got crimson tides. We just reported on them. They've got one going on right now where, a different type of algae turns the water red, kills off fish. That's normal. It happens all the time. It happens seasonally. Sometimes they're worse than others, but this thing sounds like it could be something bigger than we've ever seen before. So
so as far as this goes, if you can take a guess, if you have a theory on what this could affect, or more so, could this be because of some other event that is a global event that's happening right now, other than the Great Change? Could this be something that resulted because of something else, or something is off with the water? The water is heating up, or at least they say it is. At the bottom of the ocean, it was heated up by like a degree, which doesn't sound like much, but when you have an ecosystem that is if you've ever had a fish tank, then you understand. If you've ever owned fish, period, then you probably understand. I have never, ever been able to keep fish alive. And I do all the stupid things in the books. But again, some people are really awesome with fish. Some people are like me, that they just don't have any luck keeping all of their fish living. But if you do know, you mess up one little thing, a whole fish tank will die. All of the fish will perish. I can imagine parts of our ocean are the same way. You screw with something, then usually nature has a solution for it on a grand scale, but in areas, a lot of course, they have die-offs all the time. Let's see here. And then Black Market Media says it's probably because you're doing the stupid things in the book and not. Yes. Oh, I'm sure I am. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not gonna pretend like I'm good at taking care of fish. Every time I've tried, it has not ended well. Just say that they came acquainted with our toilet. Wages. Hey, it's nice to have you here. Lisa R. Hall is modding. Mr. IR. Charles B. Let Mother Earth heal herself, says Charles B. And then I am Chicana and Californian. That Mexican president is lying. Diana Boss says. Well, let's talk about it. The Mexico president says Mexico is safer than the U.S. Highly doubt that as well, Diana. It says that Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said on Monday that his country is safer than the U.S. amid criticism of security in Mexico following the kidnapping earlier this month of 4 Americans in northern Mexico. Mexico is safer than the United States. There's no problem with traveling safely around Mexico, he told the news conference in response to a question about U.S. travel warnings. Well, I wonder what the numbers are. I wonder what the actual stats are. How it said that murder rates were around 4 times higher in Mexico than in the United States in 2020, according to data published by the World Bank. It says the U.S. Embassy in Mexico did not immediately respond to the request for a comment. So, says that it's actually safer in Mexico than it is here. I wonder, though, if you would look at the whole country as somebody who lived there for a little bit, I would say where I was, it was really safe. But if you went down the street, there were guards at the edge of town guarding against cartels. So there were areas that I knew we could not go, because if you did as an American, you'd pretty much get, and they really put it like that. There were some places that you just did not go. In Sayulita and Bucerias, like those places were super chill. But at the very edge, at certain times during time, it was like there was some pretty huge things going on with the cartels. But is that regional? Is that like if you go to the cartel's neighborhood, that's where all the bang bangs are happening? And who is getting killed? Is it the cartel members, or is it just people on the street that are walking down the street? You know, how many Mexican citizens are getting killed compared to people that aren't from there? I wonder, I would love to look at some of the actual data that they have put out and then compare that with the World Bank and compare, you know, what is actually happening there. Juarez, I think they have like an insane amount, like 11,000 people a year perished, right? Dex, have you been to Mexico?
Yes.
Would you say that it's safer than the U.S.?
No. But I don't know the statistics, and I'm sure you can spin any type of statistics one way or another. You could pick a category or something and make a claim, but you know, I was safe where I was, but I was also in touristy areas that were and didn't really leave them. So they obviously spend a lot of money to keep those areas safe because it makes them a lot of money. I've never like traveled through the country, you know, from one end to the other to see what it was really like, you know, and you go into a tourist town and you just stay there. It's not that big of a deal.
Oki Khan says, oh yeah, because they're sending all the riffraff here. That's pretty funny. Well, could be. By the way, thank you, Dennis Wenrick, for being here. Stephen McMahon says, El Cholo of Sinaloa's lieutenants rebelled against his boss. They tortured him, pulled it. Oh, jeez. I guess it's on topic. That's horrific. And then Amex Katsuni, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Says, hey, Marf, as somebody who works graves, I appreciate the late shows. By the way, it's Ami Rain Kitsune Fox. Ame Kitsune Fox. Okay. Ami Rain Fox. Oh, Ami Kitsune. Okay. That makes sense. I was saying there's no space, so I was saying Amex. Thank you, Ame Kitsune. I appreciate that. And yeah, the late shows are not on purpose. Unfortunately, I work, from dusk till dawn, right? So the long days are not fun, and they're not fun for Dex either. I know that because it's 3 hours later there. Fractional reserve banking system has no place in a free society. It works in theory, but as we see, it doesn't work. The founding fathers knew this and tried to stop it. Also abolished the Federal Reserve. Ray the Way, thanks for the massive support of our channel. Thank you for supporting Independent. And again, thank you for the comment. And I can already see some folks are agreeing with you. And then Be Real Beast, Dex, sorry, buddy, they can't cover all loss. Still missing millions, says Be Real Beast. And it says SVB also put deposits in interest rate sensitive bonds, literally put all their eggs in one basket, says Ray the Way. And it says it is a trial run to implement CBDC. This bank was purchasing bad investments like BlackRock with depositors' money, says Be Real Beast. I'm sure that's what I would just assume there's something shade going on. Olga Tehran, thank you for the super sticker. I was talking to my coworkers at work, and even the airmen don't think like us, even say that we've been lagging as a country and military. By the way, T-App username is same as my YouTube and same logo. Ray the Way, thank you, and I'm glad you told me that. Even the airmen don't think like us, even say that we've been lagging as a country and military. Yeah, well, I mean, there's the truth. And most people they don't care about a side. They just care about what the heck is the truth. Really do love you all, Marf and Dex J. Well, thank you, Carol. And thank you for making it to another show. And then North Korea fires at least one submarine launched missile. Before we talk about that, just want to mention, if you guys have not checked out Flex 1500s, the energy solar generators, they now have a new, the tactical version. This was actually designed with the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force. So this is their most badass solar generator out there, and now it's even better. This one, though, you will have to wait for. I have the regular energy solar generator. I have the Flex 1500, which I believe is just as tough. There are some really great things. I'm not trying to outsell you out of the cooler one, but I will say I'm very happy with my Flex 1500, and if I could, it would be cool if you could mix and match. But the tactical, they're made to a whole other standard. So if you are somebody who gets the tactical of everything, this one is as tough as a tank. And now I think that might even become some sort of logo or something, because literally now the U.S. Army and the Air Force are helping design this one. This one is tough as nails. Again, knowing how tough the Flex 1500 is, I don't know how you make it tougher than that. But I can see some things like the clasps, instead of a kind of switch, now it is like a clamp, right? There's a lot of really awesome improvements. It has a reinforced 1,500-pound latches. So those are really cool. There's lots of really cool new features, and an integrated battery heater for use in extremely cold environments. That's a big deal. So if you're in the Arctic or something, you can still keep this thing going. And not only does it have a cooler, but it has a heater. So yeah, that's cool. And then the X2 is the all built in one. These are all great solar generators. These are some of the best. The reason why you would want to get something like this, which is an investment, it's not some cheap YouTube solar generator from a Chinese company that's, literally going to fall apart 2 days into SHTF. These things you want to get because they're reliable. This is power you're talking about, so it's something that everybody uses and needs. And if our power grid does go down, this is going to be a big deal for you to be able to have power on demand and be able to replenish that by putting a solar panel out in your yard. That's a huge deal. Not only that, they're silent. Nobody's going to hear them from 3 blocks away. It's going to be a huge asset to be able to have power without alerting your neighbors, especially in any kind of disaster. So if you do want to look into these, the Flex is a little bit of a wait. It's not instant. The X2 is, you can pretty much get one today. That's all built in one, can be dual linked. And then, of course, the Flex 1500. It's not their issue. It's lithium right now is so in demand and in low supply that you might have to wait a little bit after you order this. But once you get it, you will understand why you waited. They're modular. They can be extended up to 96 batteries. And of course, they are modular, so you can change them. You can literally change it from the initial being able to charge with 4 panels. You can add a mod slice, just like Legos, and it will be able to charge with 12 panels. So it's huge. They compare it on all of the comparisons. They don't show you that the only reason it will be below 1 is because the one has 8, or the capability to charge with 12 panels. This has the ability to do all of it with different mods, including their only weakness is this wasn't a UPS system. Now with the Flex charger, you have the ability to turn it into an uninterrupted power supply, to be able to plug it in, plug something into it, and then when stuff dies, it will switch over to this. It's awesome. Go check it out, marfooglenews.com/energy, and you will save a special discount through us, and you'll be helping our independent channel at the same time. Guarantee you'll be happy with this thing. It is really, really amazing. Doesn't matter which way you go. I have the Flex and the X2. They're both amazing. There's also a smaller LT. All right, and then when you do that, by the way, you are helping fund our channel. You're helping us keep going through all of the crazy rough times that all of us independent YouTubers have been going through. North Korea fires at least one submarine-launched missile, South Korea says. So this is on top of so many others, but now, again, it's another launch of some sort. North Korea fired at least one unidentified missile from a submarine off the coast in the waters of the Sea of Japan. Just to even say that they are launching submarine missiles is kind of nuts. The missile was fired near the port city of Sinpo in the South Pyongyang province on Sunday morning local time. The U.S. and South Korean intelligence authorities are analyzing the incident for further details. The launch took place 3 days after North Korea on Thursday fired at least 6 short-range missiles into the Yellow Sea. State media reported last week that Kim said that the artillery units should be prepared for 2 missions. First, to deter war, and second, to take the initiative in war by steadily intensifying various simulated drills for real war. So, pretty nuts. And then, Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, I think they've the latest update I saw on this is they've confirmed it's 2, not just 1, but the rest of the information is accurate. But they're still analyzing exactly what happened there. But it looks like 2 from the submarine. And I think it was the same submarine they said they used in 2016 when they first tested launches from the submarine.
Biblical Smackdown says, is it Kim or his sister? Well, like we talked about before, now that they have deep fakes and the ability to fake voices with AI with 3 seconds of clips or whatever, how do you really know that he is still alive? Why is his sister speaking at all? I mean, if you look at their culture, for her to even start, he must have... Why didn't he could have picked some random person in his circle that he trusted to sort of just speak for them temporarily. Why did his sister come into play in the first place? It was weird. It was like another country may have stepped in and said, we can work with her, so we're going to put her there or something. I don't know. It's very sketchy. I don't even know if he's alive. That sounds crazy unless you knew the history of his surgery, how they thought he died. Then his sister started stepping up. I don't believe Dennis Rodman has visited since before the surgery thing. That's the last thing I read, so who knows? And then Xi Jinping, the NK in South Korea, North Korea and South Korea, that is a flashpoint for, a great war. So definitely paying attention. And then Xi Jinping says China's military has to become the Great Wall of Steel. I've been talking about this for 5 years. Now it's everything. It's like a bad B movie. You know where it's going to go next. But these quotes are just really creepy. Xi Jinping has promised to build China's military into a Great Wall of Steel. Obviously, playing off of the Great Wall of China. In his first speech since he secured an unprecedented third 5-year term. It says, addressing an audience of 3,000 delegates at the National People's Congress, NPC, he said that safety is the foundation of development and stability is the prerequisite for prosperity. Mr. Xi pledged to, quote, build the military into a great wall of steel that effectively safeguards national sovereignty, security, and our development interests. Having made himself into the nation's most powerful leader since Mao Zedong, Mr. Xi also said that the country must achieve greater self-reliance in science and technology. Beijing has long held such an aim, but deteriorating ties with the West, and particularly the U.S., over technology and security has injected more urgency. The U.K. has also pledged to double the funding allocated to building its Chinese expertise across government in response to growing concern over security challenges posed by Beijing. Remember, the UK back in the day, before anybody talked about China, I showed you when they quietly said, oh, we're switching from, terrorists to China and Russia. This was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Nobody was talking about this. You followed the money. They switched all of their funding over. And now, just now, they're talking about all of this. It's crazy. The independent sector is always ahead. And it's because everything that's a theory ends up not being a theory. If enough people keep talking about it and it just never gets addressed or it gets pushed down, usually that's the stuff that ends up being true. Especially if they won't let you talk about it, it's usually the stuff that ends up being true. And it says at a closed-door meeting, he's expected to tighten party oversight over security matters, a move that comes after he's replaced top security officials with his trusted allies. If you remember when we covered that, I forget the equivalence, but he basically replaced like the top judge, the top, basically the top financial person, this person. He replaced all of them with a war panel. meaning one was like a general, one was like the police chief, one was this. He basically put in all pro-war people, and that day when he got them switched out, the prior people that were working in these top influential places were actually escorted by force out of the room, and they put these guys in. It was like a sort of a takeover thing. It was crazy. And it said at a closed-door meeting last week with government advisor, Mr. Xi said that the West, led by the U.S., has implemented all-around containment to suppress China. It said the U.S., U.K., and a number of other nations have expressed concerns over the threat of military action from Beijing against Taiwan and the country's aggressive stance in the South China Sea. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak described the Chinese Communist Party as posing an epoch-defining challenge. In his speech, Mr. Xi stressed the need for China to oppose pro-independence influences and secessionist activities and the interference of external forces, with Beijing regarding the self-ruling Taiwan as a renegade province. He said that national reunification was the essence of national rejuvenation. So he can't say all of this stuff and then Taiwan not happen. So either they finally replace slowly with infiltration all of their government to the point where they're like, come on in, or they're going to take it by force. So they're doing some pretty big war talk right now, and it's only going to get crazier. Dex, do you have a comment on this? And then Taiwan says defense spending focus on readying for total blockade by China, which was our theory, and now it looks like it may be the most probable scenario.
I think the dates that are out there are a smokescreen. It's going to be sooner. Why put a date out there if you're going to meet it? You're going to beat it.
Which, again, it says that Taiwan's defense spending this year will focus on preparing weapons and equipment for a total blockade by China, including parts for F-16 fighters and replenishing weapons, the military said in a report. China, which views Taiwan as its own territory, staged war games around the island in August, firing missiles over Taipei and declaring a no-fly zone and no-sail zones in a simulation of how it would seek to cut Taiwan off in a war. Just a few days ago, about a week ago, they actually potentially, we don't know if they did, but it seems like they did, a cargo and a fishing vessel, both big boats, ended up going through two different places where they had underwater internet cables, the hardline wires between the islands. Those were cut. That's a big scenario. That's a big scene to make if they're just going to replace them, if they're not planning on doing something very soon. Like I have said, the blockade that they did is very similar in nature to what Vlad did before he went into Ukraine, when he set up 160,000 soldiers, which the Navy that was present and surrounding Taiwan, that was almost as big of a adventure there, right? Vlad did it a year before he actually went in. He brought the 160,000 troops right to the border, set up all the gear, set up mobile hospitals, set up all the anti-air and tanks and all that, and then said, psych, it was just a drill, and then took his people back. All of the troops went back, but they left the gear. In this case, there have been rumors. Do you remember a week ago, Dex, I forgot to mention this. You know those floating pontoons that a couple people can be in? What do they call those? The buoy? Those giant buoys, the yellow buoys that have a couple of beds in them. Apparently a bunch of those are being placed, and they may even have supplies in them around Taiwan. And they've found them, and some of them have drifted out of place, and those are being found. But there's rumors that there's actually like weapons and other supplies there that they can use those as resupplies for some with amphibious boats and other things, as like an extra thing. If a boat goes down, it can go to those things, right? The whole thing with them surrounding a blockade is they wouldn't even have to take anybody out. If they were to do this whole drill, surround the island, do all of these drills, do the no-fly, why wait 5 years to have an entirely different military, then have to re-drill again when you have a military that's already done the drills, everybody knows their place, everybody knows what they're doing. The current military, the current Navy knows exactly what to do. You think they're going to wait 5 years until they have fresh rookies in there that don't know nothing, that just got in and don't know anything? I doubt it. I think that the cables being cut, the buoys being found, Taiwan they're now laying these actual mines out in the water, that this is all a sign that they are going to do this very, very soon. But that's just my opinion. What's yours? Let me know in the comments down below, or let me know in the chat. Run for Vaughn says, I cut my Bluetooth connection, but it didn't work. Eyes Wide Shut says, what day? Well, who am I to know? But I think it's going to be very soon, like this year, in 2023. And then Tech War, China's position in global chip supply chain to weaken as South Korea closely aligns its interests with Japan and U.S. analysts say. Dex, do you want to cover this one?
So the SK has invested heavily in chips coming from Xi's country, and we've been pushing through partnerships with them to get them to stop and to and move their investments away. And it looks like that is actually happening. So that's going to obviously put a lot of pressure on Xi. The tech space, is when it comes to chip manufacturing, is really critical, not only for them to have the advanced technologies, not that they necessarily are developing these, they're just producing them. But it also makes up a huge component of their GDP and the work that they produce. So if that is getting shifted out and away from them, that's going to, hurt the supply that's going there. And it's two ways. It's also the chips that are going in to Xi, not just, any of them that are manufactured outside that they want are being blocked, especially if they're of high value and high computational capabilities, especially those used for AI and other advanced technologies. Those are all being blocked, and then as well as getting them to produce it, they're looking to move and shift that out.
And there's some other, actually it's not in this, so we'll talk about it here in a second, but this is very related. It said that the U.S. would destroy Taiwan's semiconductor factories rather than letting them fall into China's hands, a former national security advisor says. I want to say that even our president made a comment about that, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Just a quick reminder, make sure to go over to marfooglenews.com/EMP. You can protect your cars, your trucks, your motorcycles, and pretty much any other device that you want to keep running after an electromagnetic pulse by the same device and the same company that is actually outfitting agencies like DHS, DOD, and of course on the DEMSO team helping the Texas grid. So go over there, go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. You'll get $50 off per device, and you'll be able to also protect any of these devices, cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, ham radios, generators, houses, from CMEs as well. So if you, again, want to protect against coronal mass ejections or an EMP attack, this would be the device you get. Go over and check out. They have devices for pretty much anything. The car version can be put in less than 10 minutes. And you're not only going to get a grandfathered in discount that it stacks on top of any sale they're going and doing, but you're also going to be helping our channel at the same time. They'll give us a commission when you go purchase. And again, that will help us out. You get something that not only will be of value, but might save your life or get you home or get you away. You'll also support independent media at the same time. They make something for everything, so go check it out, marfooglenews.com/EMP. And then now they're saying that at least the National Security Advisor, the former one, said that the U.S. would destroy Taiwan semiconductor factories. This was a big kind of debate a few months ago when they said, well, they have equipment, right, that could like self-explode or something or remotely detonate. That's what they were suggesting or saying that they could have put in place. So if China ends up taking Taiwan, it would be useless because they wouldn't actually get the semiconductor chip factory. They said that they would rather destroy them than letting them get their hands on. At least that's what the former national security advisor, said. It says Robert O'Brien, who served as national security advisor under Donald Trump, said that the U.S. and its allies are never going to let those factories fall into Chinese hands. Well, maybe under that administration. Semiconductor manufacturing, TSMC, is the world's largest chip maker, making it an estimated 90% of the market for advanced processors. TSMC produces chips for most devices and equipment like phones and cars that are used every day. More advanced chips produced by the manufacturer are used in highly advanced technology like machine learning and guided missiles. If China were to take control of USMC factories in the case of an invasion, the country would be like the new OPEC of silicon chips. O'Brien said, adding that China would be able to control the world economy. Think about that. If somehow they go in, they get it before they're able to destroy it, or even if they do, I guess you would create a war by destroying it after they've taken it. They would control the world. At least the economy. Chips are in everything. There's 160 of these chips in the average car. Everything around us, every cell phone, every device that we have has these chips in it. They are going to run the planet, assuming that we're only going to get more technological, that we're only going to have more devices. And these tiny, 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 tiny little things are going to be running it. The former advisor reportedly compared the U.S. destroying the factories to when former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill ordered the destruction of France's naval fleet during World War II after France surrendered to Germany. Basically saying, hey, if we're losing, we're taking this stuff with us, right? Neither O'Brien nor TSMC immediately responded to insiders' request. It said iPhone maker Apple is TSMC's biggest customer, and the manufacturer produces about most of the 1.4 billion smartphone processors in the world. Around 60% of automakers reportedly use TSMC's chips. Although a lot of the research and development for semiconductors happens in the U.S., the last 30 years saw manufacturers deciding it was best to outsource manufacturing. Idiots. William Allen Wrench, a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Oh, yeah? So these are advisors at the strategic, right? It was strategy, right? Stupid strategy. Says you build a big factory and you crank these things out by the thousands, and you do it on a low wage. No non-union country that probably doesn't have environmental requirements. You keep all the design and IP at home, and you'll do all of your sales, marketing, and service at home. And that's where you make the money. Basically, for the bottom dollar, we sold control of the world to somewhere else, right? Or at least to the infrastructure of the world. Says O'Brien is not the first to raise the idea of destroying Taiwan's semiconductor factories if China invades. Two U.S. scholars. Well, if they don't destroy it, what will that look like if we just let it go and give it to them? It will look like somebody's been infiltrated or somebody's got, somebody in their pocket. Let's see here. Carol, thank you. Ilea says, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jim Jim. Our wonderful mod. Happy birthday to you. Ilea. Good call. Jem, happy birthday. Jem is one of our wonderful mods. You can find her over on marfooglenews.com/friends. She has an awesome link tree over there with all sorts of cool stuff. She's a Renaissance woman. She does all sorts of different art. She's good at everything she does. So make sure to go check her out. And happy birthday. Leo Seguros, thank you for your support. And Fate Favors the Prepper Dean. Thank you so much for stopping by, and thank you for the super sticker. Went down to El Paso border wall today. Got footage. Uncommon News 777. I will have to check it out. Was there anything interesting? What did you end up catching? Well, I guess nothing's really caught down there, but you know what I mean, footage-wise. Dex, Chinese satellite gathering intel for Pearl Harbor-style hypersonic missiles. I touched on this in the beginning. But what's crazy is this is the Fugel fam got this, before everybody else started weighing in.
It's certainly crazy that this is coming out as the story right now. Because we've talked about this for a while, both their hypersonic capabilities and the fact that these green lights were seen over the islands in Hawaii. It's a critical location. Obviously, Guam, Hawaii, and other locations throughout the Pacific are very critical to our capabilities, our naval capabilities, and other capabilities in the Pacific. So if we lose that, it will give a huge strategic advantage to G and their fleet. They have been working steadily to gain other positions throughout the Pacific so they could have the equivalent, so they can hopefully, in their idea, is be able to move their Navy further out and have more ports to go to. So this is critical. Anytime you think about Hawaii and you think about the investment that's there, the investment in the other islands, Guam and others throughout the Pacific that the U.S. has bases on, it's always key when it comes to our capability in managing and the Pacific. So the notion that these lights were used to potentially measure up the atmosphere for the ability to give data to the hypersonic, so it has better understanding of where to re-enter and how the its flight may work or not work based on the density of the atmosphere in that area. I don't know how often that changes. If this is something they scan and it's only good for a little while, or if it's something they're constantly scanning and we just don't see it because it's during the day, or it's I don't know if it can scan during the day. I assume it can because it's just laser lights, but maybe it can't. Maybe it does need to happen at night. Maybe we'll see it again if it's something they have to continuously update. But the notion that this is the idea that that's what it's being used for, it's an interesting conclusion that people are starting to draw. Obviously, we've been talking about it for a while here amongst our community, but the mainstream coming around to it is very interesting.
Well, it's like right when we saw it, everybody said, no. They just like brushed it off. For the first 2 or 3 days, it was just like a little blip in the news. It was like, oh, there was these lasers seen in Hawaii. And then even when it was brought up that it was Chinese satellite there, oh, no, it was weather related. People didn't be quiet about it, though. People started talking about it on Spaces. Experts started weighing in. And then people ended up, if you look at some of the former generals that basically brought it up to senators and different Congress people and said, hey, this is really bad. We should not have them, basically lasering or monitoring anything in Hawaii like this. And there needs to be a conversation, even if it is for weather, that, we'll do it. They shouldn't be doing it because these systems can be dual used for this use. And that was something that I even asked in the beginning when I had this theory. I said, is it crazy for me to suggest that this would be for drones or LiDAR scanning for this? And I was on a Spaces with a gentleman called Tricorn. Tricorn was a very connected guy, and Tricorn, probably the only person I know that personally knows astronauts and things like that, said that not only that, there was actual plans in place. And then I was like, okay, check that. And yeah, they've actually had it on their own newspapers, how they, just like we do war games and simulations of how we had tons of plans back in World War II. The plans, what was it? The Doomsday book. What's his face that did a book that said, being a doomsday planner, something like this. I'm trying to remember his name. He was somebody who went to work and they planned on how to destroy every single person in Russia and in China. They would basically draw up plans to nuke all of Russia and all of China. And this was done. They said that there was no ever plan that was to nuke every single city in Russia that did not also include nuking at the same time every single city in China. Pretty crazy. It said that people would go into work just like a normal work day and they would plan on how to basically end the world. But those kind of things are being done. They're contingency plans. They're done all the time. Well, China has been heavily focusing on Japan, on Hawaii, on Alaska, on Guam, and on California. All of their practice surrounds taking out our carriers, taking out our ports, and taking out our islands. If you look at everything that has been done up until now, it makes a whole lot of sense. That's why they're doing the port-busting torpedoes. That's why they're practicing in areas that look identical to California coastlines. That's why they're doing things identical to Hawaii, little islands, and that's why they're taking exact replicas, or at least size-wise, of our carriers and blowing them up in the desert. Not to mention all of the stuff. I mean, they've literally made a replica of the capital of Taiwan. They're planning on doing this. It doesn't surprise me that Japan just went from a self-defense force to now in the top 10 military budgets in the world. I think it's even the top 5. Overnight, they changed it. Now they're not a self-defense force. They're going to be a force that, they're literally going to kick up their military to basically go to war. And people are still deciding if this is going to happen or not. I personally think it is. And I don't just base that on all my wild guesses. I do have wild guesses. And unfortunately, a lot of my wild guesses are right. Same with all of yours. But we have a lot of military in our audience. And you guys know this. You see them, you're right next to them. They're all saying the same thing. This looks to be like the next step in whatever this plan for our world is. And unfortunately, they don't care about human life. They don't care about the poor. They don't care about regular people. They don't care about civilians. They care about power. They care about money. And the military-industrial complex is a hell of a moneymaker. Not to mention, you have the richest, most elite people in the world funding both sides. Because they're hedging their bets, and whoever wins, they will come out on top. And then China slams U.S. for expanding military access in the Philippines. Dex, do you want to go over this one?
As we've talked about the recent advancements with the Philippines, not only expanding bases, but launching the drills, getting the Philippines to start reporting all incidences in the sea there, and ramping up that heightened level is something we saw going into this that the U.S. was going to do. And they're obviously trying to either firm up their existing allies like the Philippines or create additional ones in the Pacific theater. So we've said this is going to go right in the face of Xi. He had already barked at it a couple of times, and now here they are again. In a speech, this is from the embassy. I think it was on Sunday. They were criticizing our move, and they don't like it. So, and rightfully so. I understand their position just as much as we understand our position when we don't like them taking on and doing their deals that they do in other islands and other ports in locations that we're trying to manage and maintain. So this is part of the conflict. This is part of the conflict that's already underway. It's the power struggle that's going on in the Pacific.
And I want to say you called it as far as like the Philippines, and they had a backdoor meeting, and we even talked about how they would be, something, some sort of agreement was made, and that they would probably be expanding things, right? And then we have the Royal Navy submarine hunter escorts Russian warships in the English Channel. So big movement, at least of some, movement that most of us like to follow. British Type 23 frigate shadowed the Russians through the English Channel on Sunday morning as they headed towards the North Sea. It says that the Royal Navy is escorting a Russian task group in waters close to the UK. Submarine hunter HMS Portland deployed from Plymouth to track Russian Gorshkov class guided missile frigate Admiral Kasatonov and support tanker Academic Pashin. It said that the British Type 23 frigate shadowed the Russians through the English Channel on Sunday morning as they headed towards the North Sea. After watching every move they made as they sailed north through the Bay of Biscay, the Admiral Kosatanov of Russia's Northern Fleet has been operating in the eastern Mediterranean since early 2022. Amid Russia's illegal invasion of UKR, while academic Pashin was in the region later in the year. Poland, with her Specialist Merlin helicopter embarked, both equipped with cutting-edge sonars, sensors, and torpedoes for specialist operations, are reporting on the movements of the Russian ships. The ship's commanding officer, Commander Ed Moss Ward, said that the Royal Navy routinely responds to escort warships in our territorial waters and the adjacent sea areas to ensure compliance with maritime law and deter malign activity. Escorting the Russian task group alongside allied partners demonstrates the commitment to the Royal Navy and NATO alliance to maintaining maritime security, which is crucial to our national interests. The Russian passed through the Strait of Gibraltar last Wednesday, and NATO warships have escorted throughout their journey. Basically, they are following the Russian ships wherever they go. And they're doing it with sub-hunters so they can see anything else around it, right? They're big ships, they're big, powerful ships, so I guess some would feel good that they're following them and keeping track of where they are. And then, Dex, do you want to talk about Russia loses 1,000 soldiers in reported worst day in the conflict?
So this is being reported out of the New York Post, but it's still coming from information from a general, by the general staff of the armed forces in UKR. The spokesperson made a claim that just in Saturday alone, they took out 1,090 troops from Vlad's country. So, we always take this information with a grain of salt, no matter which side it comes from, because it's coming from basically one side of the story. In this case, it's coming from UKR. They're gonna, beat their chest as much as they can, so to speak. And they may embellish this, they may not. We don't know. But that's the whole point. You never know what's coming out from each side, because they're going to put out information and make statements and claims like this that are in their best interest, no matter what they're talking about. So there is some other stories that kind of go along with this. We've been bombarded with stories about how many numbers have been lost from Vlad's side. It's been pretty significant, at least if you tally up the numbers that come out in the Western media. It's hard to get official numbers out of Russia because they don't necessarily want to admit if those numbers are actually true.
And true, they may not be. We don't know any of the actual numbers on either side because they always, just tell us what they want us to hear. So I don't even know about history books about our prior conflicts, right? I see what they put into the news today, and the news today ends up being in history books tomorrow. And I'm like, well, if I saw this event for myself and it wasn't at all what they put in the news, then in 20 years, that means the history books are going to look back at this day, and that's going to be what's archived. So that's what's sad, is if you think about the mainstream media decides what goes in the history books for future kids to be reading about what happened back then. So there is a big point of even reading mainstream media with others and putting a record out there that people questioned this stuff. I don't know if somebody will ever watch these archive shows of ours, in 40 years from now, like, oh, look at when they had computers on their desks and not in their heads. This guy was a weirdo. But he questioned everything. Weird. And then, of course, since they said that, their chip in their head would burn out and they would just fall over. And whoever they're with, it would be like, oh, Minority Report, you were going to commit a crime because you thought nasty things. Just saying, that's the future of things. And before we move on, make sure to go over and check out marfooglenews.com/prep. If you don't have long-term survival food, this is a great way to do it and to get yourself a discount and to support our channel at the same time. This is long-term survival food, so it'll last 25 years, and it's freeze-dried, so it'll last forever. Again, over 2 decades. You can keep this wherever you need to keep it. If you need to put something out somewhere and put it at your bug out spot, keep it in your bug in spot. It's really good to have, and this is the best way to do it in bulk and affordable wise. A lot of folks look at survival food and they go, holy moly, for a single meal you can pay $15 at Walmart and thing like that. If you want to go bulk, it's way, way better down. It brings that cost down to a few dollars per meal. So again, go over to marfooglenews.com. You don't have to go for the 3-month supply, but if you do, you always get either a huge discount or a huge freebie. Again, the last one that they were doing was the free Alexa Pure Pro, which is a $300+ value, which is a gravity-fed water filtration system. So make sure to go over and check it out. It never hurts to get free stuff and to help independent channels like ours. We're not treated equally, so we appreciate that you guys kind of equal that out. Thank you, and again, that's marfooglenews.com/prep. Highly recommend, too, getting one of their freeze-dried meat buckets. Definitely complements the 3-month supply really well, because then you'll have also all sorts of different kinds of meats to put into all of the different meals. All right, and then we have Russians warned of nuclear attack after hackers break into the country's TV service. This is kind of deja vu, but kind of not. This actually goes over how many times this has happened. And I would think, man, if there's people like us in Russia that are like, I don't know, this is very weird. Why are they doing all of these false missile alerts? Is it hackers or is it really a plan? Is it because it's really going to happen? I also think, like, is there the equivalent of like all of the channels here in Russia, right? Is there theorists that say, that the Americans are doing all of these local events over in their country, right? They're probably saying the same thing. They're like, CIA was behind it. CIA, or are they saying, I bet it was KGB, right? But one thing that is going on here is there's some pretty scary alerts going out saying that they are going to have some sort of nuclear attack. It said that hacked Russian TV and radio stations broadcast startling messages of a nuclear attack and urged residents to put on gas masks and run for cover. Think about this. Your TV all of a sudden goes from its regular programming and says you're about to get hit by a nuclear attack, kind of like Hawaii, says put on gas masks and run for cover. That is absolutely terrifying. It says on Thursday, residents in eastern Russia were told to take potassium iodide pills, which some did, and take shelter immediately during the hacked broadcast, according to the report from Metro. It says there was a strike. Urgently go to a shelter. Viewers of TV were told as a map of Russia displayed the country turning red from west to east. It said seal the premises. Use gas masks of all types. In the absence of gas masks, use cotton gauze bandages. Is that freaking terrifying or what? It says screens also displayed a black and yellow radiation warning with the message urging people immediately to shelter. It said the messages were seen on TV and heard on radio stations in the Moscow and Sverdlovsk regions. The messages also interrupted programming in Yekaterinburg, Russia's 4th largest city. The hack was widespread enough that it forced the Russian Emergency Ministry to respond, releasing a statement assuring residents that a false air raid alert was broadcast in Moscow after servers of radio stations and TV channels were hacked. Think about it. When you actually hear it from and the air raids, you actually hear the official systems going out. You see on TV, whatever favorite TV show you're watching, and it switches over to that. You're not going to think it's a hack. You're not even going to think it's after a second, most of them, I'm sure they have a similar system where it says, this is a test. When it says, the day that I see in Hawaii, those people went through some crap. And by the way, our Fugel family friends and even Shannon, our good friend who does the Facebook, she was there. And she ended up, her and her husband were heard those alerts. I mean, that's just crazy. Said it was absolutely freaky. And I think her husband was currently serving, so she ended up having to, like, her husband had to go to work that day or something, and oh man, I couldn't imagine. Could you? And it says hackers have frequently targeted Russians with messages of fake attacks since the country launched in its invasion of the neighboring UKR, including a siren on February 22nd broadcasting air raid alert and another one broadcasting missile threat less than a week later. A day before the latest hack, streaming services in Russia were hacked and taken offline during Russian President Vladimir's address of the State of the Union. A group named IT Army of UKR, which formed shortly after the invasion, claimed credit for the attack on the streaming services, but not has claimed credit for the recent dire warning on Russian TV and radio. So they don't know who did the last ones that were really, really scary. That's creepy. And I'm sorry, I just realized I said Shannon. Rhiannon. Sorry. I was thinking of somebody else. Sorry. But Rhiannon, not Shannon. Recently on mine. Sorry about that. Bizarre reason of the Pentagon is conducting radiation tests on ferrets. Dex, why is the Pentagon conducting radiation tests on ferrets?
Well, it was just 2 weeks ago we reported that they came out, the DOD or someone had come out and said that the Havana syndrome didn't exist. It wasn't from one of our adversaries. It wasn't from a weapon of sort. But now they are conducting these radiation tests on ferrets and primates so that they can have a better idea of just what the source of the Havana syndrome was. So I don't know. What is it? Did it not exist, or does it exist? They seem to be going back and forth on this quite a bit, but apparently they are studying this and they are using this to try to recreate and see if they can figure out how this notion of this Havana syndrome happened, which is, for those of you who don't recall, Havana syndrome first started, it was in Havana. There were diplomats that felt like they had been hit with something. And they had speculated it was some sort of energy device, but they had gotten, a lot of dizziness, brain issues, things like that. I don't remember the exact symptoms, but they were mostly symptoms related to, their brain, their equilibrium, stuff like that. So it was reported by numerous people, and then it happened in a few other locations, and that's what brought about this whole notion of this potential of what's called right now being called Havana syndrome.
So as far as the Havana syndrome too, it's been, it's had this cloud of mystery behind it forever. So who knows? Maybe something else will come out. Maybe the Pentagon will release something else, and we'll finally get to the bottom of the mystery. Dex, do you want to go over some of the web only? And I do have a couple of people to thank. Thank you over on DLive. I'll get to you guys in just a second. In fact, thank you, Jessica Mathis. I appreciate you. And then Dex, I don't know why DLive has been just failing to give me any kind of information. Can you tell us the top 3 over on DLive? Just wanted to make sure.
It looks like just Be Me, Kimbria, and Marco, and I can't see the full name.
Well, thank you, Marco, Kimbria, and Just Be Me. Appreciate you guys supporting over on DLive. And then thank you, everybody over on Rumble. I appreciate you guys. And then, of course, on YouTube, thank you, everybody, for popping in tonight, including Uncommon News, Ray the Way, Leah Seguros. Thank you, Aliyah. For the happy birthday message to Jem. And Uncommon News says water drops, kid clothes, markers, trails, etc. And then Ray the Way, in the Air Force, we literally successfully launched ICBMs from a C-5 and ended that program because, boo-hoo, Russia is too weak to defend against that. Huh. I'd love to read more on it. I'd love to find out why. Is that what they said? That just sounds grossly idiotic. All right, and then Dex, let's go over the web only. We got a lot of crazy stuff going on over there as well.
Certainly is. So head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or open up the description on YouTube or Rumble and look for the show notes link. It'll take you right to this page. You'll get to all the news we just covered. Everything's documented there. So if you're looking for the sources, that's where it is. You're going to find this orange bar that says overflow. Below that is the rest of the story. So let's go through it real quick. Do have some updates with the SVP as far as who they're blaming. Of course, as soon as you can always blame previous administrations. So that's one of the first tactics that's out there. Of course, Jim Cramer is in the news around this stuff too, although I'd never like to listen to that guy talk. That's just my personal opinion. He says go up and you go down. If he says go down, you go up. That's
Go out. You need to invest in this. Go grab that. And I'm telling you, I'm mad. I'm so mad about this stock. It's going crazy. I'm nuts. Listen to me. Blah. Sorry.
Yeah, I just prefer to do the opposite of what that guy says. As I mentioned earlier, HSBC is acquiring the SVP in UK, and of course they also repeat all their depositors' money is safe there as well. Hey, interesting story about Elon and the Starship rocket and the percentage of chance he's predicting it's going to have for success. So when it first launches, that may be an interesting one to keep your eye on because it's the first time it will actually be used. Of course, they've been doing tons of testing. There's stuff going on with oil and Alaska, and if you want to know what's happening there, as well as what's going on with a ship on its way to Cuba that shouldn't be, and where it's coming from, that's all in the news. There's a lot of updates with UKR, what's happening, who's upset. Like UKR is trying to change the name of Russia's official country name, and that's upsetting them. But you know, the interesting things that happen during conflict. Lots of other updates with that is there as well, including they're trying to go after the oligarchs again with more sanctions. I don't know how that's really going to work. Some updates with the deal with Rivian and Amazon, which was supposed to deliver 100,000 vans for delivery. That's up in the air now. And some interesting things happening at the border, especially with the bridge that they had to close. You may have already heard about it, but there was a big rush there. And then spring breakers, that's in the news, and some more updates with Elon around the Pentagon and his security risk to the nation, and Zuckerberg and what he knew about the potential of social media addiction, according to filings they found. So that and so much more. Didn't give you all of it, but it is all there. So make sure you go over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or click on that show notes link in the description, and you'll get here. You can get to the rest of the story. We put it together for you every night so you can get the full picture of everything that's going on in one easy place.
And a really important story there, China to develop a dredger more powerful than the artificial island builder of the South China Sea. It's a bad B movie. You see where it's going. Dex, what was it? A week and a half ago, I said that they're going to build more islands. This is what our Fugel fan military told me. They're going to build more islands that are closer to the U.S. They're going to keep expanding. It was when we had this discussion about the expanding, that they could just keep expanding their waters, right? They built an island out of nowhere. They took dirt from the bottom and made the Spratly Islands. They're now developing a dredger that's basically twice as good at doing that and twice as fast. They're building more islands. It's like you can see it coming from a million miles away. Thank you, Dex.
Much love. Great job, brother.
Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime.
Great, really,
NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it's not a shout out. IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to
Get ready for the great war.
for the great war. Get ready for the great war. Get ready for the great war. Hey, on the back, on the wine, oh, I said the dim runner on the dim wine. I got the CJJs and the Mr. Dime. I got the Deck J's, so I'm thinking, do you up? I'm on the G, the Lord, and the Julie C. Good night, still more than me. Oh, now, with the Carol now. I say the on now, bug, man, I weep now. Hot button in the box in the Matthew shop. Big at the I, Kevin up, yeah. Whoa. I don't know, car might be tracker, Rob Mills. It's a great war, not that great war. Get ready for the great war. Get ready for the great war. Get ready for the great war. So many ready, but not enough for. Great war is knocking at her front door. So many ready, but not enough for. Great war is knocking at her front door. Ready for the great war. Might as well get pumped up for it. I said, get on the guy, fire storm. Bring her on the horn, on the do it no harm. I see your boy on the bed on the way now. Going on in the Marfoogle now. Greatest minds in the round in the Marfoogle. On the background down in the door low. MD on wild, bring it on wild. Going down now in the bring on the wall. Nah, with the snarps in the curve. Curve creeper in the mislead in the herd. I get the queen to the left in the curve. Pre-war party time, everybody heard. I know, with the world in the hollow. Everybody really want not yellow. Everybody long now. Yeah. Shake on the bones, cat me famous. Everybody knows, you know the hits. No, ain't no genius, but I can tell when it's coming serious. Always, I just think it's boy. Come on now, everybody itching more. I say shake it, and then shake it more. Katie needs a lie, and no way to word. So many ready, but not enough for. Great war is knocking at her front door. So many ready, but not enough for. Great war is knocking at her front door. So many ready, but not enough for. Great war is knocking at her front door. I'm back, war. Bake it till you make it. I'm on the shake it. On the back, I'm on my bake it. We got on it down and now I better break it. Falling on it down, today I skate it. Oh, on the anklet. Throw me down and got it wait it. Oh, now, back now, brain it. Great war, cause I got it great on the wine. Great on the war, cause it's going on fine. Oh, nah, what is it now? Whoa. Get it on the Rambo bell. Bring it on down now, ready for the well. Whoa, now, back now, let's see the hell. Going down now and ain't doing well. Going on the deep live bomb in the field, really. And the stage are rolling on, and we getting real silly. On the last day, take it for you on the dead. Bring it down now, back with the honesty. We could bring it down and then knock out the door. Bring it on the background, ready for war. So many ready, but not enough for. Great war is knocking at her front door. So many ready, but not enough for. Great war is knocking at her front door. I gotcha. I bring it all now, thanks for the double chat on Tasha. Oh, and the brick, oh, Asha. Oh, now back like Asha. Forget